The dining room once smelled of sizzling burgers and warm bread. Tonight, a plate slid back across the counter untouched. Rosa Vega carried it with careful hands. "They said it tastes strange," she whispered, eyes downcast. David Morales stared at the patty. Perfectly seared cheese melted just right, vegetables crisp. Yet the customer had walked away. Another rejection. At the corner table, the Whitaker family gathered. For 5 years, they ordered the same 4 burgers. Today, plates of grilled chicken and fish tacos took their place. David's chest tightened as if something had broken inside him. Clint Rourke stepped in holding his tablet with grim numbers. Sales were collapsing. Online reviews spoke of odd flavors and warnings to avoid the burgers. David clenched his fists, the weight of 20 years pressing on his shoulders. "If I don't find the truth, everything I built will fall apart." 20 years earlier, David Morales stood in a rented kitchen with nothing but a dream and a family recipe. His grandmother had handed him a small notebook filled with stains and grease marks. Inside, one page carried the blend of spices she used for every burger. He promised her he would build something with it. The first weeks were chaos. He had borrowed money, maxed out credit cards, and slept on the floor of the shop. He flipped patties himself, burned his hands, and worked until dawn. But when the doors opened, the line stretched outside. People waited in the cold just to taste the burgers. Word spread fast. The seasoning was unique smoky, yet bright with a kick at the end. Families drove across the county to sit in red booths and eat burgers wrapped in thin paper. Laughter mixed with the crackle of the grill. The air was heavy with the smell of charred beef and toasted buns. Rosa Vega had been there from the start. She was young then, with a quick smile and endless patience. When the line grew too long, she calmed customers with small jokes. She knew half the town by name. Over the years, she became more than an employee. She became David's anchor, someone who believed in his dream when others doubted him. The restaurant grew into a landmark. Parents brought their children after baseball games. Couples came on first dates. Truck drivers stopped at midnight for a hot meal. The place wasn't just a business. It was part of the town's memory. David walked through the dining room each night, shaking hands, checking tables. He took pride in knowing his food brought people together. Every burger that left the kitchen carried his grandmother's promise: quality care and trust. For 2 decades, he guarded that trust like treasure. He checked every delivery, trained every cook, and repeated the same words: never cut corners. Customers felt safe here. They tasted history in every bite. And that was why the sudden rejection cut so deep. This restaurant was not only his work. It was his identity, built from fire smoke and countless shared meals. The dining room was quiet now. Empty tables stretched where families once crowded shoulder to shoulder. David stood near the window and saw only a few cars scattered in the lot. He remembered nights when the line wound outside, children pressed to the glass waiting for their turn. That memory made the silence heavier. Clint Rourke approached with a folder in his hands. He was steady, reliable, and had been with the restaurant for years. His reports always carried facts, not excuses. Today, he shook his head. Inventory checks out. Deliveries are fresh. Procedures followed. Nothing looks wrong. David flipped through the numbers. Meat from the same supplier. Buns delivered on schedule. Staff trained the same way he taught them. On paper, everything was perfect. But the reality in front of him told another story. He opened the review page on his phone again. The words cut like small blades. Burger had a weird taste. Couldn't finish it. Fries still good, but the burgers feel stale. Something's different now. Each line was vague but deadly. No customer wanted to risk coming back. He scrolled further. Ratings had fallen fast from near perfect to a dangerous low. 3 weeks had undone 20 years. His chest tightened as if the clock itself was counting down. If this continued for another month, payroll would be impossible. If sales fell further, doors would close. Customers were already warning each other to stay away. Every day lost meant more trust slipping through his fingers. Clint waited, silent eyes searching for direction. David had none to give. He felt trapped between reports that showed nothing wrong and customers who swore something was off. He stood in the quiet restaurant hearing echoes of the past, the buzz of voices, the smell of smoke, the joy of shared meals. All of it seemed to fade with each bad review. He whispered to himself as if making a vow. 3 weeks. If I don't fix this, the restaurant will die. David stared into the mirror late at night. The man looking back at him had gray at the temples and heavy lines around the eyes. He saw fatigue where there used to be fire. For the first time, he feared the restaurant might not outlive him. The thought twisted inside his chest. His father had worked construction coming home broken and bitter. David once promised him he would not repeat that fate. He swore he would build something lasting. Now the promise felt fragile slipping away with every burger returned to the kitchen. He pressed his palms against the sink, his reflection wavering in the glass. If he trusted the reports, nothing was wrong. If he trusted his customers, everything was collapsing. He could not ignore either. He needed another way. An idea formed slowly, dangerous but clear. If he could not trust what he was being told, he would see with his own eyes. To do that, he would need to disappear as the owner and reappear as someone no one would suspect. David pulled out an old cap from the closet, the kind that hid his face. He found a pair of glasses that changed the way he looked. A thrift store trip gave him baggy jeans, a faded shirt, and worn shoes. Piece by piece, David Morales vanished. In his place stood Harlan Gray, a man desperate for work and willing to take any shift. The disguise was crude but effective enough. No one would see the proud owner. They would see only another tired worker in need of a paycheck. He even practiced softening his voice, stripping away authority until it sounded ordinary. The next morning, he walked into his own office with Clint and explained that a new hire would be joining the night crew. Clint raised a brow but trusted his decision. David signed the form with his new name, his heart pounding as if he were committing a crime. He folded the papers and told himself this was the only way. If the night shift hid secrets, Harlan Gray would uncover them. The owner was about to become the lowest man in his own kitchen. Harlan Gray arrived through the back door at 9:45. The kitchen lights glowed pale against the dark night. He carried his borrowed backpack and forced himself to look nervous, not commanding. A tall man with sharp features glanced up from a clipboard. His eyes were cold, his posture rigid. "You must be the new guy," he said. His tone was flat but carried authority. This was Derek Vaughn, the night manager. Derek barely offered a handshake. He looked Harlan up and down, then turned back to his list as if judging his worth in silence. "We keep things tight here. No mistakes. Follow orders and you'll be fine." Harlan nodded quickly. Understood. Inside, David measured every word. Derek radiated control, almost too much. Derek led him into the kitchen. The crew was smaller than the day shift, only 3 others. Each looked up with brief curiosity before turning back to their stations. At the grill stood Ethan Calder, broad-shouldered with tired eyes. His apron was stained, his movements precise but weary. He offered a small nod, more polite than warm. At the fry station, Maya Ellison worked quickly dropping baskets into the oil. Her expression was guarded, her eyes sharp. She gave Harlan a glance that seemed to ask questions she didn't voice. Near the prep table, Tessa Monroe arranged vegetables with delicate care. She checked each slice twice, aligning them as if a mistake might cost her more than a reprimand. Her hands trembled faintly, even as she worked. The room itself felt different from the day. There was no chatter, no casual jokes. Every motion was measured. Knives sliced oil, hissed, grills sizzled, but voices stayed low. It was efficiency born not of pride, but of caution. Derek moved between them like a silent overseer. He corrected without raising his voice, yet his presence pressed down on the room. Harlan sensed the others stiffen whenever he drew close. Ethan spoke once, showing Harlan how to press patties on the grill. His instructions were clear but clipped as though he had learned not to waste words. Maya corrected a timer he set too long, then looked away before Derek noticed. Tessa said nothing at all. Harlan felt the weight of it settle on him. This was not the vibrant, noisy kitchen he remembered. It was careful, controlled. Surprise gave way to curiosity. Why were they so tense? Why did Derek's presence feel like a shadow stretching across every station, and beneath that curiosity came tension, a tightening in Harlan's chest? Something here was wrong. He could feel it in the silence between words and the quick glances when Derek's back was turned. The night shift was a different world, and he had just stepped into it. The first orders of the night came in steady waves. Ethan showed Harlan how to season patties with the blend, flipping them with practiced ease. The smell was rich, the kind that once made customers hungry before they even stepped inside. Everything looked perfect. Plates left the line fast. Burgers, stacked high fries, golden lettuce, crisp. Harlan stole glances at the tickets. These were the same meals his grandmother's recipe had made famous. No shortcuts, no sloppy work. On the surface, nothing was wrong. But when Rosa delivered plates to the dining room, David caught the same look he had seen earlier. Customers took bites, chewed slowly, then pushed plates aside. Fries and shakes vanished. Burgers stayed half-eaten. His stomach sank. Harlan turned back to the kitchen, determined to watch closer. That was when he noticed it. At the prep table, Tessa reached for a tray of buns near the walk-in cooler. They looked slightly different, less plump than the ones stacked on the shelf. She froze when Derek walked past. Then, without hesitation, she pulled from that tray and set them aside for Ethan. Minutes later, Derek stepped into his office. The shift in the room was immediate. Maya left her fryer, grabbed buns from the main shelf, and slid them toward Ethan. Ethan's shoulders eased as he built the next stack of sandwiches. Harlan's pulse quickened. He waited. Derek came back, clipboard in hand. The eyes of the crew flickered toward him. Tessa set her knife down, walked to the corner tray, and pulled more buns from it. It happened again and again. When Derek watched the crew use the corner tray. When he left, they switched. Harlan leaned closer to Ethan. "Why the switch?" he asked, trying to sound curious, not suspicious. Ethan's jaw tightened. He flipped a patty and didn't answer. Maya caught the exchange and gave Harlan a sharp glance. Her lips pressed together, warning him to stop. Later, when Derek stepped away to take a call, Harlan tried again. "What's with those buns in the corner?" Tessa's knife slipped a slice of tomato, falling uneven. Her hands trembled as she whispered, "Don't ask. Just don't." The words hung heavy. Harlan looked back at the tray. The buns didn't appear spoiled from a distance, but there was something about the way the crew handled them, hesitant, almost fearful, that made his skin crawl. Every motion was part of a quiet dance. Glances toward Derek, careful timing, silent agreements to avoid the corner tray whenever possible. The kitchen was clean. The burgers cooked well. Yet here was a secret, hidden in plain sight. Why was everyone afraid of that tray of buns? The kitchen was in the middle of a rush when it happened. Orders piled up and the fryer hissed as baskets hit the oil. Maya moved fast, grabbing buns from the shelf to keep the line moving. She didn't notice Derek watching. She placed the fresh buns beside Ethan. They looked plump and golden, the kind any customer would expect. Ethan reached for them, then froze as Derek's voice sliced through the noise. "What did I tell you about rotation?" The room went silent. Fryers, bubbled grills crackled, but no one spoke. Maya turned a bun, still in her hand. Her eyes widened. I grabbed the wrong stack. I'll fix it." Derek stepped forward. His clipboard hit the counter with a loud crack. "Wrong stack? Or are you ignoring my instructions?" Maya swallowed hard. It was a mistake. He closed the distance in 2 strides. His hand landed on her shoulder, not gentle, not violent, but firm enough to make her flinch. His fingers dug into the fabric of her uniform, holding her in place. "You like your 30 hours a week, don't you?" His voice was low, steady. "You want me to keep signing off on that schedule." Maya's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her knuckles whitened as she set the bun back on the shelf. She nodded once quick and small. "Good," Derek said, easing his grip. "Then use what I tell you to use. No questions. No mistakes." He released her and stepped back, but the weight of his hand lingered in the air. Ethan kept his eyes on the grill, flipping patties as if nothing had happened. Tessa sliced tomatoes in silence, her hands trembling harder than before. Harlan stood, frozen rage pressing against his ribs. He had watched managers correct employees countless times, but this was different. This was control through fear. Derek wasn't protecting quality. He was protecting something else. Maya returned to her station, shoulders, stiff eyes fixed on the fryer. She moved quickly, almost desperately, as if proving her obedience could erase the moment. No one spoke for the rest of the rush. The only sounds were metal tongs, sizzling oil, and the scrape of spatulas on the grill. Every glance was stolen quick and cautious. Harlan kept replaying the image in his mind, Derek's hand gripping Maya, the quiet threat hidden in his words. It was more than discipline. It was intimidation. The burgers left the kitchen dressed with buns from the corner tray. Customers in the dining room chewed, frowned, and pushed plates away. And in the kitchen, not one voice rose to question it. Harlan felt the truth settling in. Fear had rooted itself deep here. Whatever secret those buns carried, Derek was willing to crush anyone to protect it. Derek spoke often about numbers. He paced the kitchen with his clipboard, tapping the corner with a pen. "Food costs are down 15%, he said more than once. "That's efficiency. That's how we survive." Every time he said it, his chest swelled with pride. He repeated the number as if it were a medal pinned to his shirt. 15%. The crew gave no response. Ethan kept flipping patties, head down. Maya busied herself with the fryer. Tessa arranged lettuce leaves, never lifting her eyes. Their silence was louder than words. Harlan let the claim sink in. 15% was massive. A shift that big never happened without major changes. Yet Clint had confirmed nothing about suppliers or recipes had changed. The question burned hotter each night. Where was the saving coming from? He tried to ask Ethan in passing, "How's he pulling those numbers?" Ethan's spatula clanged against the grill. "I don't know," he muttered too quickly. Maya cut in with sharp precision, her tone flat. "Don't ask about numbers. Just cook." Tessa shook her head so slightly it could have been a twitch. Her lips pressed together as if holding back words. Harlan backed off, but his suspicion grew. They were hiding something. Not from him as Harlan, but from the truth itself. Later that night, Derek stepped outside to take a call. His voice carried through the door, clipped and urgent. "Yes, costs down again. 15% this month, too. Owner doesn't ask questions. He's happy with results." Harlan's chest tightened. His own name twisted into an excuse. He had never told Derek to cut corners. He had never traded safety for savings. But Derek was saying otherwise to someone on the other end. When Derek came back inside, the crew stiffened again. Harlan noticed the shift like a temperature drop. They reached for the corner tray. They handled each bun carefully as if it might crumble in their hands. The pattern was too clear now. The savings, the silence, the fear, it all pointed to that tray. By midnight, Harlan had decided. Reports told him nothing. Questions gave him only silence. If he wanted answers, he would need to go into the storage himself. He waited until the shift slowed, until Derek stepped away to handle paperwork. Then he wiped his hands on his apron and moved toward the back. His steps echoed against the tile, steady and heavy. The smell hit first, faint sour clinging to the air near the cooler. His stomach turned before he even touched the handle. Harlan knew he was about to see something that would make him sick. The cooler door groaned as Harlan pulled it open. A wave of cold air rushed over him, carrying with it a smell that made his throat tighten. It was faint at first, then stronger as he stepped inside. Sour damp, like wet cloth left in the sun. He moved past neat rows of condiments and sealed containers. Everything here looked clean, labeled, organized. But the smell grew heavier the deeper he went. It clung to the walls, clung to his clothes. At the far corner, half hidden behind stacked jars, he saw them. Large plastic bags stamped with the bakery's logo. They were pushed under a tarp as if someone had tried to keep them out of sight. Harlan pulled the tarp away. The first bag looked swollen. The buns inside were soft, collapsed in on themselves. Some carried dark spots across the surface. At first glance, they looked like seeds, but the longer he stared, the clearer they became. Fuzzy patches of green and black spread like tiny colonies. He opened the second bag. The smell punched him in the gut. Stronger now, thick and rotten. The buns here were worse. Mold bloomed across their tops, white filaments stretching outward, curling over the edges. One bun split open under the pressure of his touch, releasing a musty cloud that made his stomach lurch. The third bag broke whatever hope he had left. The buns had almost liquefied. Their shells had caved surfaces speckled with green constellations of rot. The odor was unbearable. It filled his lungs, coated his tongue. He pressed a hand against the shelf to keep from gagging. Harlan staggered back, his breath shallow. Images of customers chewing slowly, setting plates aside, replayed in his mind. The strange taste. The half-eaten burgers. Here was the reason. These buns. This poison. He gripped the edge of the tarp with shaking hands. This wasn't an accident. Someone had sorted them. The least damaged buns were placed on top. The worst ones shoved to the bottom. Someone had made sure they were used piece by piece until the bags were nearly gone. His chest tightened with fury. For 20 years he swore never to cut corners. And now mold was being served under his name. His grandmother's recipe buried under rot. His customers' trust crumbling with each bite. He stumbled back toward the door, lungs burning from the sour stench. His heart pounded against his ribs. The truth was out, and it was worse than anything he had imagined. Harlan stumbled out of the cooler, still fighting the sour air in his lungs. His hands trembled as he leaned against the counter. He thought he was alone, but when he looked up, Ethan stood there. The cook's face was pale, his eyes wide. He didn't speak at first. He just stared at Harlan as if weighing whether to keep silent or finally let something out. "You found them, didn't you?" Ethan's voice cracked barely above a whisper. Harlan didn't answer. He didn't need to. The look on his face was enough. Ethan rubbed a hand over his tired eyes. "Derek told us. He told us Mr. Morales wanted it this way. He said the boss ordered every bit of stock used, no matter how old. Said if we wasted food, we'd all be out on the street." The words hit like a punch. David's name twisted, used as a weapon. Harlan clenched his fists to keep from shaking. Ethan sank onto a crate, elbows on his knees. "I didn't want to believe it, but what choice did I have? I've got 2 kids at home. One of them needs medicine every month. My paycheck barely covers it as it is." His voice broke. He pressed his palms against his face. "I couldn't risk losing this job, not when they depend on me. So I kept my mouth shut. I cooked with those buns. I knew they were bad, but I told myself maybe it wouldn't matter. Maybe the grill would kill whatever was wrong." Harlan felt his chest twist with pity, then with rage. Ethan wasn't the villain here. He was trapped, manipulated, forced to choose between feeding his family and poisoning strangers. Ethan lifted his head, eyes red. Derek said Mr. Morales didn't care about the details, just the numbers. 15%. He repeated it over and over until it felt true. And if we didn't follow along, he promised to cut our hours. Said he'd make sure we'd never work in this town again. The kitchen noise faded into nothing. For a moment, there was only Ethan's broken voice and Harlan's pounding heart. He wanted to shout to tell Ethan the truth, that Morales would never allow this, that he built his life on quality, not deceit. But Harlan bit back the words. His cover had to hold. Instead, he placed a steady hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I get it," he said softly. "You did what you had to do." But inside, fire raged. Derek had not only stolen money, he had stolen David's name. He had turned it into a threat, a tool of fear. The sympathy Harlan felt for Ethan hardened into fury. This was no longer about bad buns. This was about betrayal at the deepest level. The next night, Harlan kept close to Derek. He moved around the kitchen as if following orders, but his eyes stayed fixed on the clipboard Derek carried everywhere. Late in the shift, Derek set it down on the counter while he checked the fryer. Harlan drifted near, wiping surfaces, his heart beating faster. He angled a glance at the numbers. Romano's Bakery. Delivery, 150 units. Harlan's stomach clenched. He had seen the truck arrive that morning. Only 100 had been unloaded. He had counted them himself, stacked neatly in the storeroom. 50 units existed only on paper. His throat went dry. Derek wasn't just cutting corners. He was padding records, creating food that wasn't there. The missing bread meant missing money. Derek picked up the clipboard before Harlan could linger. Rotation is everything, he said with a smirk. That's how we keep costs down. Harlan forced a nod, swallowing the bile rising in his throat. Later, when the orders slowed, Derek stepped outside. His voice carried through the thin wall. Harlan edged closer, crouching by the doorway, pretending to scrub a mop bucket. "You'll get the payment next week." Derek said, his tone sharp and fast. "Yes, the extra 1,500 went through fine. The owner's clueless. Thinks I'm some efficiency genius. Doesn't ask questions." Harlan's jaw tightened. 1,500. The exact figure Derek bragged about saving in costs. Only it wasn't savings. It was theft. He pulled his phone from his pocket, hand shaking slightly. He tapped record. Derek's voice cut through the night air clear enough to seal his fate. "You don't understand," Derek continued. "The guy's desperate. He wants numbers, not details. He sees 15% and he thinks I'm saving his business. He has no idea I'm keeping the difference." Harlan bit the inside of his cheek until he tasted blood. His name had been turned into a shield for corruption. Customers were poisoned, employees threatened, and all of it done under the lie that Morales approved. When Derek ended the call, Harlan slipped back inside, breathing hard. He snapped photos of the clipboard left on the counter, making sure the inflated numbers were clear in the frame. Every detail mattered: dates, suppliers, quantities. Each click of the camera felt like a nail driven into Derek's coffin. Harlan tucked the phone away as Derek re-entered, calm and smug. The manager looked around the kitchen with false pride, as if he owned the place. Harlan forced himself to stay quiet, to act small. But inside, fury boiled. The evidence was piling up. Soon, there would be no escape for Derek Vaughn. The kitchen was running hot, tickets piling up on the rail. Maya moved fast, sweat beading at her brow. In the rush, she reached for buns from the regular shelf. Her hands shook, but she chose them anyway, sliding them toward Ethan. Ethan froze. His eyes darted to Derek, who stood only a few feet away. "What did I tell you?" Derek's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Maya stiffened. The others were gone. "I thought you don't think Derek snapped." His face darkened as he strode forward. He grabbed the bun from her hand and slammed it onto the counter. "You follow orders." The room went still. Oil hissed, grills smoked, but no one moved. Maya lifted her chin, her voice trembling but steady. "Those buns are fresher. Customers deserve better." A dangerous silence followed. Derek's eyes narrowed. He stepped so close that his shadow fell over her. His hand hovered near her shoulder, the memory of his earlier grip hanging in the air. "You like your job, don't you?" His words were sharp, each one falling heavy. "You like the hours I give you because I can take them away. I can cut you down to nothing." Maya's lips parted, then closed again. Her defiance flickered, swallowed by fear. She looked at the floor, jaw tight. Derek leaned closer. "You don't question me. You don't make waves. You do what I tell you, or you're gone." "Understand." Her shoulders slumped. "Yes," she whispered. "Say it louder," Derek demanded. "Yes," she repeated, her voice louder, but breaking. Satisfied, Derek straightened and tossed the bun back into the corner tray. He turned to the rest of the crew. "All of you, remember this. I give the orders. You follow them. No exceptions." No one spoke. Ethan flipped a patty, his hand shaking on the spatula. Tessa's knife hovered over a tomato frozen mid-slice. The kitchen felt colder, heavier. From his station, Harlan slipped his phone from his pocket. He tapped record heart racing. Every word, every threat, every moment of Derek's control was now captured. Derek walked back to his clipboard, calm once more as if nothing had happened. The crew bent to their work, silence pressing down like a weight. Harlan's pulse hammered in his ears. He had enough proof now. Photos, numbers, voices, fear carved into every second of this shift. Tomorrow, the mask would fall. The dining room filled early that morning. Chairs scraped against the floor as employees gathered, whispering among themselves. Some looked worried, others confused. Mandatory meetings were rare and never at this hour. Derek sat near the front, leaning back with his arms crossed. He yawned, checked his phone, then tapped his foot against the leg of his chair. To him, this was a waste of time. Rosa Vega stood near the back, her face lined with concern. Clint Rourke kept glancing at the clock, his jaw set. Ethan, Maya, and Tessa huddled together, their expressions uneasy shadows still clinging to their eyes after the long nights. At the rear of the room, a man stepped forward. His cap, pulled low glasses still in place, the faint stubble of a fake beard shadowing his jaw. He looked like the quiet new hire everyone had ignored, but when he cleared his throat, the voice was different. Stronger, deeper, familiar. The room stilled. Derek frowned, finally lifting his head. The man reached up, peeled away the glasses, pulled off the cap. With a steady hand, he tugged the false beard free. Gasps rippled through the room. Rosa covered her mouth. Clint's eyes went wide. Ethan's lips parted in shock. Maya gripped the back of a chair for support. Tessa froze her hands, clasped together. It was not Harlan Gray standing there. It was David Morales, the owner they had served for years, the man whose name had been used to threaten them. Silence dropped heavy over the group. The weight of it pressed against every wall. Derek's smirk faltered. His color drained. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, he looked unsure. David's gaze swept across the room, steady and unflinching. He took one step forward, then another, until he stood at the center. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice echoing in the quiet. Not one person spoke. The truth was about to break open. David set a stack of papers on the nearest table. His hands moved slow, deliberate. One by one, he spread them out where everyone could see. Photos of bread bags spotted with mold. Close-ups of collapsed buns, green fuzz spreading across their tops. Dates printed on the packaging weeks past their limit. Murmurs spread through the room. Faces twisted in disgust. Rosa pressed her hand tighter against her mouth. Next came the records. Pages of invoices with inflated numbers. One line after another, 150 listed when only 100 had been delivered. False entries in Derek's neat handwriting. David pulled out his phone, tapped a file, and let the recording play. Derek's voice filled the silence. "You like your hours? Then you do what I tell you. No questions, no exceptions." Maya lowered her head. Ethan flinched. Tessa's hands shook so badly she almost dropped her chair. Derek pushed up from his seat. "That's taken out of context," he snapped. "I did what I had to do to keep this place alive." But Ethan stood, his voice unsteady yet clear. "You lied to us. You told us Mr. Morales wanted it this way. You said the mold didn't matter as long as costs went down." Maya rose next, anger breaking through her fear. "You threatened to cut my hours when I refused. You made me choose between doing the right thing and feeding my family." Tessa stood last, her voice trembling. "You told me to stay quiet. That speaking up meant I wasn't a team player. I was terrified every shift." The room tightened around Derek. His eyes darted, searching for support, but none came. Rosa's voice cracked as she finally spoke. "This isn't the restaurant I gave my life to. This isn't the place I loved." Her hands shook as she gripped the edge of the table. You poisoned everything." Derek's face twisted. His words came out raw, furious. "I saved this place. I cut costs when no one else could. I kept you all employed. And he jabbed a finger toward David. He's the selfish one. He cared more about pride than survival." Clint stepped forward, calm but firm. "That's a lie. I've worked here long enough to know Mr. Morales has never once sacrificed quality. Not for numbers. Not for anything." Derek's mouth opened, but no sound followed. His anger drained into silence. His chest heaved as the weight of the evidence pressed down. David's voice came steady, final. "You're done here." The words hung heavy in the room. Derek Vaughn, who had ruled the night shift with threats and lies, now stood alone. His shoulders sagged. His face was pale. He grabbed his jacket, eyes fixed on the floor. No one moved to stop him as he walked out. The door closed behind him with a hollow sound. Derek Vaughn was finished. When the door shut behind Derek, the room stayed silent. Everyone looked at David, waiting. He took a slow breath, the weight of 20 years pressing heavy on his shoulders. "I failed you," he said. His voice carried more sorrow than anger. "I let myself believe the numbers, and I stopped looking closely. That mistake is mine, not yours. I should have protected this place. I should have protected you." Rosa's eyes glistened. Ethan lowered his head. Maya and Tessa stood still, unsure what to believe. David stepped closer to them. "I can't erase what happened, but I can promise it will never happen again." He laid out a notepad filled with new steps. "From now on, every delivery is logged by 2 people. Every count is verified. Nothing leaves that kitchen without being checked twice." He held up a bright card with a number written on it. "This is a direct line to me. You can call or text any time. If you see something wrong, if you feel pressured, if you have doubts, use it. No one will know who sent the message. It comes to me, and only me." The crew exchanged looks. Uncertainty still lingered, but something else stirred beneath it. A small spark of relief. David pressed on. "I would rather answer 10 false alarms than miss one real problem. Speak up. I will listen." He met each of their eyes in turn. Ethan, exhausted but loyal. Maya, still trembling but proud. Tessa, fragile yet careful. Rosa, hurt but steadfast. Clint, steady as ever. "You are the heart of this place," David said. "Not the numbers, not the savings. You. If I forgot, that I am sorry. I will not forget again." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Ethan straightened his back. Maya gave a small nod. Tessa wiped her eyes and set her shoulders firm. The silence broke softer now. It was not filled with fear, but with a tentative trust rebuilding itself piece by piece. The first stone of something new had been laid. 3 weeks later, a food blogger walked through the door. She had been one of the harshest voices when the scandal broke. Now she returned with a notebook and sharp eyes. She toured the kitchen, asked questions, and watched as deliveries were checked by 2 sets of hands. She saw logs signed by staff, photos filed for every shipment. Nothing hidden, nothing skipped. Her review appeared 2 days later. "Dave's Grill is rebuilding trust the hard way, open, transparent, relentless. Every detail is documented, every standard is clear. I have never seen a restaurant fight so hard to earn back its name." Customers began to trickle back. First in 2s and 3s, then in groups. They came cautiously, but they stayed. 6 weeks after Derek's fall, the Whitaker family returned. They had not ordered burgers in months. That night they did. 4 specials, just like before. David watched from behind the counter, his hands folded tight. Mrs. Whitaker lifted her burger, took a slow bite, and paused. Her eyes softened. "This," she said, smiling at her family. "This is the Daves I remember." Something lifted inside David's chest. For the first time in weeks, the weight of shame and anger eased. He turned toward the kitchen where Ethan tended the grill, Maya pulled fries, and Tessa arranged plates with steady hands. Rosa carried food to tables with a smile that looked real again. The glow in David's eyes was quiet but strong. Trust had begun to return. Not all at once, not easily, but piece by piece it was coming back. Because trust is not built once. Trust is something you prove every single day.